like this? Do you, the fact that you have the depth of experience that you do with writing may make this very different for you, but do you tend to find that you subconsciously or consciously write, I'm going to say, to a formula, because I can't really think of another way to try and express it, but if you're thinking about refreshing a website compared to a sales page or a Facebook ad, do you have a series of steps that you go through there?
Most of the time I start without trying to fit it into a structure intentionally. And I do think that this many years in, I don't need to revisit structure or look at it to hold me to like help me focus or hold me in or help me remember what needs to be there or what's important. If I just write and kind of trust my process, it all ends up being there. So that being said, I've been writing my whole life, and I've been weaving stories and crafting stories for a very long time, even before I was doing it for online marketing. And even before I was working in the world of direct response copywriting, which is very interactive and there are specific buckets to fill. And what's interesting is the formula and the strategy is so similar that it does sort of become intuitive.
I think it is one of those things, isn't it? There is an innate sense as you go through things within any given specialism, you would expect to, I suppose it's one of those things it's learn to follow the rules so that you understand how to break the rules and go a bit off piste with it, but know where you're going with it all the same, and you're still holding that same space together, understanding what you expect the outcome to be. So I'd just like to dip back actually a little bit, because you almost touched on it there. How did you transition into the online arena originally? What was it that made you think about developing your business and your entrepreneurial life through the online platform? Was there a specific catalyst for you? What sort of things have you taken from that other people could take inspiration from out of your story in terms of a transition into an online space?
So I always knew that I wanted to be a project-based person, and I always felt called to be an entrepreneur and a writer. So none of that was new. That's been with me for as long as I can remember. And I knew that I thrived on working from project to project more than I thrived on any kind of ongoing day in, day out work. That was just what was suited to me. And that was the process of getting to know myself. I actually, not many people know this, but I went to arts high school. So like if anyone knows the movie Fame or the TV show Fame, because they turned it into a TV show, like that's the high school that I went to. So I went to this arts and music and performing arts high school, and I was embedded as much as anyone can be in this very rich creative community from a very young age, and grew up around that. So approaching life with a creative perspective. And also my father was an entrepreneur. So I was really raised with like, create the life you want, create the business you want, like do what makes you happy, do what you love. You could start a business and do anything. It's all there for you. So as terrifying as that was for me, to kind of decide, okay, well, it's time for me to stop, which was for me bartending at the time, to kind of stop that and go full force into running an online business. I knew that I had to take that leap. And if I never took the leap, then my business wasn't going to build itself. Right. So it was really, I just hit an age where I was like, all right, it's time to grow up.
As disappointing as that must have been. Yeah. That moment of realization, it is time. Yeah. So, so talk me through that transition then with Hollywood and writing in that environment, and do you still do the two things alongside each other? How do you compartmentalize your brain? Because I guess although they come under a sort of a common writing banner, I suspect that the disciplines are quite different.
The disciplines are different. I think that what's more challenging isn't necessarily the work. It's the being a CEO and doing the tasks of running a business and operating as a business, and being an admin and like holding business strategy in your mind and visioning what needs to be, being the person you need to be for your business as your business visionary, and also being the creative you need to be when you're doing creative services for your clients, or when I'm doing a project, for the film industry or for TV. Either way, I think those two mindsets tend to be a little bit in conflict with each other. So, it's never perfect. I'm not the person that's going to be like, here's exactly how I do it, and it's perfect every time. I think that I'm very debrief. Yeah. I mean, I'm very playful in the way that I approach my schedule, and I try to experiment with different things. And I'm not someone who thrives on the same thing every day all the time. So it's actually, I think, really healthy for me that I'm always being thrust into having to figure out a new challenging way of, arranging my time, or supporting my clients in a new way, or squeezing a screenwriting project in with running my business as well. So that's actually really healthy for me. I've learned. I don't think that it's necessarily healthy for everyone. I think that could be, for some people, that could be really overwhelming and stressful, and they wouldn't necessarily function as well with managing all of that. But for me, I like juggling a lot of projects at once. It makes me feel excited. It gives me energy. So it's good. Yeah. And the answer is yes, I do both. I have projects that I've developed, for film that I'm writing on spec, which in that industry basically means that like no one's bought it. I'm just writing it with the intention of it getting made or getting bought or getting optioned or potentially producing it myself. And then I occasionally have projects that I'm hired to write or work on or develop. So I would say I fit it in where I can, when I can. Sometimes I write on the weekends. Sometimes I carve out an afternoon. Sometimes I carve out like a few hours once a week to just devote to that. And I think it's challenging to carve out time for writing, no matter what you're writing, for many reasons. Even if there's money attached to it, it can be challenging for people to actually sit down and be like, I'm going to block out everything and do this. I would
definitely say that the 14 odd years that I spent working in a design agency, the concept of saying to a creative, yes, but it's due in an hour, and them going, I got nothing. That's just sometimes how it is, that this whole idea of, turn the tap on and sit down, and just because you say Tuesday afternoon, I'm doing this, doesn't mean for all sorts of reasons that you will be in position to bring your A game to that couple of hours on a Tuesday afternoon, because that's what you thought it was going to be. And I think for me, that's one of the beauties of the online world is the degree of flexibility that you have to think, I could actually just juggle these bits around because I'm feeling this thing right now, to dive into it and give it your all. And you'll probably actually spend a fraction of the time for being absolutely in the zone at that moment in time, knowing that you can move other things around. And I think that is one of the great joys for me, is that so much of it can be turned into a much more flexible existence in that way. But I still think it takes a level of discipline, both with self and with clients as well. Boundaries and all that sort of thing come into play, of course, there, to actually keep things moving along and not just putting everything off, waiting for the right time to do it. There does also come that sort of 11th hour moment where you do have to produce, because people do expect something to be on the other end of that.
Absolutely.
So I'm presuming that's something that you feel that you have evolved with, again, from an experience point of view, different clients, different projects, different scale of project as well, I guess, comes into play there.
Yeah, I think some projects go faster than others, and you can't really predict going into it. I think there are projects that I think will take 10 hours and take 50 hours. And then there are projects that I assume will take 100 hours and I'm done in 10. And I'm like, okay, cool. I think you kind of don't know what energy you're dealing with, because I believe that every project has its own energy, that's determined by everyone involved, who are the different voices involved, where are the bottlenecks, in decisions or in hesitation, or if you're dealing with other people's resistance around things, then that's going to make the process slower. So if everyone is like, I'm clear, my resistance is removed, I'm ready, I'm energetic, like things just happen quickly. But when you're working in teams, you have a lot of different energies, emotions, points of view, opinions. It just makes the whole process a little bit different.
So discipline aside, then, if we take somebody just starting out in the online world, or maybe somebody currently in full time but thinking down the side hustle type lines, what sort of advice would you bring for them? Where should they start in terms of getting that initial message out? Should they be starting with their brand story? Should they just be writing and seeing what comes through? How do they learn to bring their personality into how they want to live in a slightly different way? Certainly if they're still running the corporate life as well. That personality piece, and how do we inject that into what we write and how we communicate?
Well, there are a few answers to this, because it really always depends on what their goal is, right? If their goal is to build a side hustle and to do it in like the least amount of hours possible, they could potentially do that without even building an online brand immediately, right? Like they could just do outreach and they could get clients that way. And there's so many ways that, I know people that have built 7-figure businesses without even having a website. So I think it really depends on your goals and what you think your strengths are and how you really want to support people. If they feel that they are a strong writer, and if they have a desire to build an online brand, if they think that there's room for books and for online funnels, and they want to create passive income by using the internet and what the internet has available, amazing. If you want to build an online community, a tribe, you're going to need a story that people can rally around and a message that people can rally around. If that is your goal, then my advice is to dedicate time just for free writing and playing with the written word. Because it's really only going to be through exploring what the experience of writing is for you, really letting yourself brain dump on paper, where you're going to figure out all the different thoughts that are rattling around in your head, where there might be nuggets of gold for your brand.
Yeah.
And you're going to learn how to just be who you are in writing. I think we're so used to editing as we write. Honestly, when we're composing emails, like, I want to say this, but I want to say it the right way, and I want to deliver the message correctly. And I think that that's wonderful, but it becomes a process, especially if you're coming from the corporate world, of actually unlearning all the other ways that you learn to write and how to be proper and, be polite and structure things a particular way. It takes giving yourself permission to have fun, to be messy, to play on the page, to allow yourself to just write stream of consciousness, and look at your writing and ask yourself, like, if you read it out loud, does it actually sound like you? And the only way to mine for your story and for your message is to sit down and start writing drafts of it. There are tons of trainings you could take. I have trainings free and paid. There are other people out there who have trainings free and paid. There's books you can read. There's tons that you can do if you want to learn the structure of story, if you want to examine what it takes to get really clear on your message that way. But the truth is that even in writing a story, it's so common to write the entire thing before you know what you're trying to say. And then when you get to the end, you're like, oh, that's what I was trying to say. That was my message this whole time. Like, I never knew. Now I'm going to go back and rewrite the whole thing. Now that I know what I'm trying to say, great, let's rewrite it. And that's normal. So I think part of it is just being okay with, like, being in that process where it's a little bit messy and uncomfortable, and it's not all neat and perfect, but it can be, if you allow yourself to have fun with it and not edit while you're doing it.
I think that's one of the things, and actually I think you referenced email in there, and as much as in the online arena we talk email indoctrination series and it's part of a funnel and that sort of thing, I often find that actually just writing a straightforward email and a response to an email actually can be an incredibly testing experience. By the time you go through the written word doesn't sound like the spoken word, and you've got to try and hope that the person gets the intonation and actually gets what you're really trying to say. And there's only so many bold and italic things that you can use on that sort of two-dimensional canvas of an email, that actually it's one of the reasons I don't actually enjoy email very much, because I think I do feel too much temptation to keep questioning it and thinking, does it sound like that? And then you think, it just seems to take forever to write something that actually you could dispense with verbally in seconds, and people would just understand. But it's not always the way, and it's not always what's available. So we have to learn to hone the skill, I guess, as we go. And that just comes with practice again, isn't it? It's that personality and getting people to interact with you in real life and hope that they get enough about you from what they see. As you say, you mentioned that no like trust factor in the background to say, oh, I see what is written here. I get why it's in caps or whatever